And we are back with another edition of How About Them Celtics slash Talking C's. We're here with Bobby Kravitsky of SI Media Group, Inside the Celtics is their Celtics page. Bobby, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Jack. How about yourself?
I'm good. Sam, how are you? I know we talk every day.
Sick.
I figured I'd ask.
I'm sick.
It's that time of year. It's going around, Sam.
I'm not convinced I'm actually sick. I just think the environment of Vegas versus New England and the change is really bodying me.
It's tough.
Because I had no voice on the trip towards the end, and then I get back, and then like all of a sudden there's all this moisture, and now I'm all like mucused up.
We were at a restaurant at the airport, and Sam's asking for a straw. He just goes, "Can I have a straw?" And the waitress
I sound
can't
like
hear him.
SpongeBob and Patrick when they're in the Sandy's Tree Dome and they need water. That's what I felt like.
It was so funny. But anyways, we're here to talk about the Celtics today, obviously, per usual. Celtics just picked up a win over the Cavaliers last night as we're recording this Tuesday night. This drops actually today. I'm used to pre-recording. So last night, as you guys are listening to this as well, picked up a win over the Cavs after going down big early. We're up by as much as 10 late in the fourth quarter, ended up winning by 7. Overcame the slow start. A lot of talk after the game about staying focused, playing in a playoff mentality. Bobby, what's your biggest takeaway from that game? In my opinion, I said this on our recap last night, I think it was their best win of the season.
Yeah, I think it's certainly in the conversation for sure. And sometimes, you try to be leery of recency bias when that happens. But given the opponent, given how tough Cleveland has played them, I think it's the widest margin of victory between either side in the dating back to last season. So for the Celtics to do this on a night where they slow played it in the beginning, and I have no issue with that, and we're going to hit on all these topics, but then their defense in the fourth quarter to limit them to 21 points, that's what really stood out to me, and that's what you're talking about when you say their focus and what does that look like, and playing through a game where they weren't at their best for a lot of it on either side, but elevated at the end.
Yeah, I think the defense at the end is a great thing to focus on because before they went on this little hiatus with the in-season tournament semis and the actual final being played, they lost the quarterfinal to the Pacers and had a meltdown because they couldn't get a stop. My head was in my hands. I was very upset on the podcast. I was ranting, saying that they haven't grown at all and we're seeing the same stuff as last year and so on. But to see them buckle down, lock up a Cavs team that gave them a ton of trouble last year, despite Karis LeVert coming out and hitting them with 7 quick fourth quarter points to start things off, I was pretty satisfied with that. I love the character they showed of staying with the game despite, starting 0 of 9 from 3 and Jaylen Brown being the only guy you could rely on to get a bucket in the first quarter. So impressive focus, mindset, and discipline from the Celtics last night by not quitting and not getting too desperate in their methods.
I think the thing I was most impressed by was this team last year got absolutely killed for not adjusting in the playoffs, for giving up when they were hit with an early deficit. And they kind of corrected both of those things in this Cavs game. I saw somebody on Twitter say, "Oh, no Evan Mobley, blah, blah, blah." Doesn't matter. This is a good Cavs team. They have, 3 All-Stars leading the way. Max Strus has been a good player this season. He played well against the Celtics last night. The biggest thing for me is they stuck to their guns offensively in the sense that they played the same way they did in the first quarter throughout the rest of the game. And it just so happened that the shots started falling because that's the correct philosophy to play with. But on defense, they adjusted and they switched things up at the right time. And we can go to KP here because I know you mentioned it, Bobby. They completely switched up the way they played defense in the third quarter. I wrote about it for Celtics blog a little bit in my article. Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, and Max Strus combined for 8 points on 3 of 10 shooting in the fourth quarter. That's how you win a basketball game, especially in the playoffs. They completely changed the way they were guarding pick and roll. They pressed up more. They stopped them. They wouldn't let them get shots off as easy as they were in the first quarter. Like, not only did they stick to their guns on offense and stay true to what works and what they believe works, but they switched things up at the right time on the other end, which credit to Joe Mazzulla, because no one seems to credit him when things go right. They only seem to bash him when things go wrong. That was by far the most impressive thing to me last night was the dichotomy of staying with it on offense, but switching it up on defense because that's what was needed in the moment.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to Joe Mazzulla having his finger on the pulse of what warrants adjustments and what do we need to stick with. And it's not that it's going to come around offensively in this case. It's that you believe in the process. And so that's what you rely on. You're building a foundation here with the long term in mind. And so defensively, you're exactly right. It was that ability from Kristaps Porzingis. And I've been talking and writing about this since they got him, that everyone made such a big deal immediately about him in drop coverage. But despite his size, he's surprisingly light on his feet. He has the length to be able to challenge any potential threes. And I mean, Cam kills me for this, good friend of the program, but he has quick hips. And so he can get out there and, again, use that length, get a hand in the face of any potential three, and then stay with someone on the drive and be attached enough to block a shot or alter it around the basket. And that's what we saw. And then, not to get too long-winded, but another component here, if Kristaps Porzingis is up, yes, I just said he can hang with someone on the drive, but you need that backline rotation to protect the rim. So whether it was double big with Al Horford or however they sliced it, Derek White, Jack's favorite center in the NBA, different mechanisms to be able to not only cut off the Cavs' water from beyond the arc, but limit their offensive production altogether. So it was Porzingis playing up and then everyone being on a string, and that communication and synergy it takes to hold a team to 21 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it's really nice when you have the defense Avengers out there. Porzingis had to miss a bunch of time. He missed the semi quarterfinal in Indiana where they couldn't buy a stop, and you can see how much his presence affects things when you're fending off a Knicks team on Sunday that's trying to come back, and then you're also helping yourself build a cushion against a Cavs team that's pretty good. It has very dynamic scorers in the back court, and Karis LeVert decided he wanted to get some buckets too. So having Porzingis to affect everything with his length, like you said, and then you have the backcourt of Holiday and Derek White to battle through the screens and switch. And those guys are so versatile that if they get switched onto a bigger guy, specifically Holiday, it does not matter. It's not the end of the world. And the rotations were great. There was one possession, I think it was in the first half, where Holiday was tasked with defending the ball, gets picked, defends the roll man, then has to rotate out to the corner to contest a three, and I think he ran a Coro off the three-point line, and Cavs ended up turning the ball over. It might have been the second half. I don't remember. But it was a great defensive possession from Holiday. He showed why he's one of the league's best defenders. He showed why the Celtics gave up so much to get him. And he showed why he's going to be important to this team come playoff time. So having everybody healthy, everybody out on the floor, you can really put more eggs in the defensive basket. And you don't have to necessarily outshoot them from three. I know, Jack, we talked about, wow, Celtics shot less threes than the Cavs, who shot 45 to their 44. So it's not like they didn't take threes, but the Cavs tried to beat them at their own game, and it didn't necessarily work.
Yeah, and while we're talking about defense, Bobby, I know I mentioned this to you at the before the season, we were at practice. I said, I think the Celtics have a chance to have 3 all-defensive players this year. I said Drew, Derek, and Kristaps, and that was without even considering the fact that Tatum and Brown both said they wanted to get it. I stand by what I said. I think Kristaps, Drew, and Derek have been good enough to be on an all-defensive team this year, all of them. I don't know if it'll happen because there's limited spots, and voting could get, clustered, and people might not want to pick guys from the same team. But at the very least, Drew Holiday absolutely deserves to be a defensive team. Derek White absolutely deserves to be a defensive team. I think Kristaps could be the one to get the boot from that trio because you just don't think of him as easily as the other two. But they could all make it. I still believe it to this day with how well they've been playing.
So I'm going to stand by what my rebuttal was, which is there's a difference between warranting a selection and actually getting it. And I might take some heat from this in the comments, but I would not be surprised if they only get one player on an all defensive team, and that being Derek White. Drew Holiday, there's more flash now that they've gone, somewhat recently. They've started really trusting him to play this free safety rover type of role, and he's wreaking havoc. And that will get people's attention. The more he does it, the more highlight plays he makes, like turnovers that lead to fast break points. So if he can stick with that, then he'll get enough attention, because there's even people who have votes. There's a significant chunk that just watch the team they cover. So I don't know, despite the merit for all 3 of them making an all defensive team, again, I could see it only being Derek White who ends up getting a nod.
Yeah, it's funny. Like Derek White, if you had to pick one, I think it's him, because there's been so much hype and gas around Derek White after he was left off that top 100 list, where everyone was like, he got snubbed. He deserved it. I think you had Bill Simmons come out and say he was really probably. Oh no. It was Redick that said he's probably closer to top 50 than he is out of the 100.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's probably very fair. But now everyone's like, we owe this guy. This has to be our guy. And it's funny when you think about the way NBA awards are decided. It's almost like a political campaign where the fan base or the media surrounding whatever team these guys are on are really pushing for him. Like when Marcus got Defensive Player of the Year, everyone was like, well, the media really had a big hand in that, and they were forcing it, and should have been this guy, should have been that guy, should have been Rob instead of Marcus, blah, blah, blah. Same with the Embiid MVP campaign when everyone was like, did he even deserve it, or did he just get one because like they felt like they owed him one? So I can see that, but it sure would be sick if like all 5 starters got it, because when superstars say they want something, usually they get it. Tatum and Brown say they want to make all defense. Everyone has to respect that. You might get the guys that only watch their team to vote for them. Could be a little bit of a wrinkle there. It would be like really messed up if it was like Tatum and not any of the other guys we mentioned. They're like, we got to give it to somebody. Give it to Tatum.
I mean, y'all know my vote would be for Derek White, so I can't complain too much. That
no way.
Wait
a
minute. But as we're talking about the Cavs game, the next thing, Joe Mazzulla always stresses this, but he once again mentioned it last night. He says winning on the margins, and if you want to talk about winning on the margins, going 26 for 26 from the free throw line is a pretty good way to win on the margins. I saw a tweet. I think Randy tweeted this. They've shot perfect from the free throw line while shooting 25 or 26 or more, whatever, some stat like that, 6 times ever. And they've done it in each of the past 2 seasons at least once. And they hadn't done it before that since like the 70s or something ridiculous. So for as much as the Celtics have struggled with free throws, from our perspective, I'm pretty sure they have been one of the better free throw shooting teams in the league for the past 2 years. On top of that, Joe Mazzulla's emphasized offensive rebounding a lot more this year. They're crashing from the corner. Sam Hauser, in particular, is just always in there at the free throw line trying to get rebounds off threes. They're
Pritchard
winning
too.
on the margins. That's the goal. Pritchard too. Holiday too. All the guards and wings are really emphasizing that. How much, I know, Sam, you are a very, I don't want to say anti-analytic, but you are very much like I test over analytic.
When you started talking about the defense with Porzingis, I thought we were going to talk about some crazy metric stat of how he affects shots in the paint. I was like, listen, I got nothing for you, but I'm pretty sure it exists. So yes, out on the analytics, but go on. I'll listen.
I was going to ask, Bobby, I was curious your thoughts on the idea of winning on the margins. Then Sam, I'll let you, if you'd like to go back at it or just, provide your perspective as well. I think it's an interesting convo.
So I'm no Dick Lipe, but a quick statistical nugget that the Celtics are 1 made free throw away from tying the most they've made in a row since 1997-98. They're at 40. They made 41 consecutive in 2019 from February 3rd to February 9th. And this is a team,
knock on wood.
I said it yesterday, so maybe it was a reverse jinx, or like I said it, so of course the opposite unfolded, where they are not getting to the free throw line a lot. And it's not been an MO for this team since, it's not a Joe Mazzulla thing, but since last season. And I thought they did a better job of that when Ime was the head coach. Again, it's not about the coach per se, but it's just when the change started to occur. And sure enough, last night they go out and 26 of 26 at the line. The volume is as impressive, or at least almost as impressive, as making them all. And so now they have this bid at franchise history in a sense. And that's crucial, especially when you're not shooting well. So I asked Joe Mazzulla about winning on the margins because they also had twice as many offensive rebounds as the Cavaliers. And both teams were pretty hot from beyond the arc. Both shot over 40%. And those are difference makers in every single way, from how it allows guys more opportunities to find a rhythm, to touch the ball. It makes it easier to set up on defense. More shots equals greater margin for error. So yeah, I think the Celtics, in a way where they really haven't the last 2 seasons when it comes to that free throw output they generated, they found a way to win on the margins, which in general they've been really good at this season.
Well, I'm still kind of in Vegas mode. So I'm in my head flipping through. I'm like, is there a way you can bet on Celtics first free throw, make or miss? Because I would say miss. It feels like the jinx is out in the ether. It feels like they are due to miss their first free throw of the game. as they go for a franchise record. The free throws had gotten so bad for me at one point this year, especially with Tatum, who's missed way more than he's supposed to, that when he complains now, I'm just like, is he even allowed to complain with how inefficient he's been from the line? Like, do you really want to get up there, Andre Drummond, and shoot it off the rim? But yeah, really like the way that they forced the issue against the Cavs. I think it really helped them to stabilize a game that wasn't going so well for them as they were, firing up a bunch of shots, seeing them bounce off, hit the back rim. The back rim was brutal in the first half. So it was just one of those things. It was like Celtics controlled what they can control yesterday. And that's exactly how you win the tough ones. It's one of the things I think they need to do going into the playoffs. You play hard defense, you force the issue, you play physical. That's really all you can actually control. You can get good shots, but it doesn't mean they're going to go in. It doesn't mean you're going to be on that day. But when you're off, doing all those things to muck up the game makes it easier to take it when it's not there for you.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think the winning on the margins is important. I don't know. It kind of feels like it speaks to what you're talking about. As much as it is Joe Mazzulla buying into the analytics, it is him saying, okay, we'll control what we can control and everything else will come with it. So I think
you'd have me coach the team. I've been telling you for years.
Mixes the two mindsets there. But last thing from the Cavs game, and this was more of an overarching storyline lately, overarching, I should say, as I mess up my words. Jaylen Brown, as a passer, has come into his own this season. I know we've talked a lot on the pod about how his two-man game with KP has really translated and, dribbled into the rest of his game, playing with everybody else. It showed up against the Cavs once again. Every time he got into the paint, it seemed like his eyes were on the perimeter. He was looking to make the right pass. He was looking to make the right move. And he's also blending it in with the perfect level of aggressiveness, as he was the only guy who made any shots in the first 2 minutes of the game. I know Jason Tatum talked about it last night. I know Joe Mazzulla talked about it last night. They both mentioned potential assists and the importance of that stat on top of just the general assist stat. Bobby, what have you been seeing from JB this season?
Well, that's the new buzzword, Jack. I'm curious to see if Celtics fans, especially on social media, latch on to potential assists. And when it comes to Jaylen Brown, if that's something that we're seeing on, I still call it Twitter and different platforms consistently move. It's Twitter. And if we see that consistently moving forward, that how many potential assists did Jaylen have? And that was something that Joe Mazzulla fielded a bunch of questions about. And numbers be damned, I certainly think that Jaylen Brown has grown as a facilitator. And it started with obviously his offseason work, but once the regular season arrived, that two-man game with Kristaps Porzingis out of the pick and roll, where the reads are easy. He made some really nice passes to him in crunch time opening night against the Knicks that got them some meaningful buckets that they needed to put that game away and prevail. And then when Porzingis went down and it looked different, but it was still equally as impressive, that really lets you know that there's substantial and legitimate growth out of Jaylen Brown as a facilitator. So ESPN can clown him and ignore context all they want. The reality is that he's improved in a meaningful area to become more dynamic.
I think this is one where we analyze which social media team is worse, ESPN's or the Celtics, because the Celtics social team has had some real bad doozies this year, starting with the posting the video of Jaylen Brown dribbling with his left hand. Now, ESPN...
They didn't post that.
They didn't post that?
No, someone clipped that and got it out there. It may have originally stemmed from a montage the Celtics put out, but they weren't like, hey, here's Jaylen Brown fumbling the ball.
Okay, I got more in the clip then. And they posted a picture of Tatum lifting weights and brick by brick. I have that one bookmarked for when he has a 2 of 9 like yesterday. But the reason I'm bringing up the social media blunders is because ESPN picked maybe the worst time ever to be like, hey, Jaylen Brown sucks at passing, because he's actually been pretty solid this year, to everyone's point on the show so far. I mean, yesterday against Cleveland, 4 assists. He made some really great passes. They posted him up late in the game, and he found the man in the weak side corner who was wide open, picked apart the Cavs' rotations like any other superstar would that's comfortable setting up his other guys. It was spectacular to see. I think the addition of Porzingis has certainly helped that. Like you said, Bobby, he's being put in positions to make simple plays, to increase his confidence, and to better him as a playmaker. And it's something that they needed from him in the playoffs last year, and they couldn't get it. Now he's been given the tools to do so, the confidence to do so, the opportunity to do so. And you're seeing the Celtics really take a leap at times when he's able to do that. I think he's a big barometer of how great this team can be or how bad they can be. It just depends on what Jaylen you're going to get.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've been saying it on the pod all year. He just has been making improvements. I mean, I wrote an article, you both know, about Jaylen Brown this time last year, and I got a lot of
Hates Jaylen Brown.
yeah,
Lot
I
of
got a
hate.
lot of negativity thrown towards me on Twitter. And then by the time the playoffs rolled around, it was kind of like, why are you mad at me? I'm right. Like, why are you guys getting mad at me? Like, everyone turned on him by the playoffs. And this year, it seems like the hate is still flowing a little bit, but he's been better. So it doesn't make sense now. Like, you can criticize him when it's the right time to, even though some people don't like that. But then when it comes time to praise him for what he's improved upon, you're still gonna blame him. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think he's been a lot better in that area. You still see some remnants of last year, like he gets up and he fumbles the ball a little bit, or he makes the wrong read. But a lot of the times, the mistakes this year are him trying to make a good read or an out of nowhere read, like trying to make one of these passes. You're like, oh, I didn't even see that coming, and it just doesn't quite work. But I'd rather that than missing the pass entirely, which is what happened a lot last year. So I think the improvements have been staggering by Jaylen Brown in that department. So I've been very impressed. Speaking of the Cavs, though, as we're talking about it, the Celtics do play the Cavs again tomorrow night. Joe Mazzulla talked about it before the last Cavs game, saying, I think Scal asked him, is it harder to win the second game after you've won the first? And Mazzulla said, I don't think it should be, because I think you should treat every game the same, blah, blah, blah. And as much as that should be the goal going in, there has to be a little bit in the back of your mind saying, okay, this is what we did right during this game. They might make these adjustments, getting in their own head. Bobby, do you see them getting tripped up at all in the second Cavs game after they already won the first one?
Well, this isn't a prediction of what's going to happen. I wouldn't call it tripped up. And it goes back to process versus results. So, okay, what do we believe in that we're not going to adjust, even though we now have to be prepared for how they might respond to what we're doing? And what do we feel like, whether it's based on how we played and the opponent or something else, what do we feel like we need to tinker with? And so that's going to be interesting to see. But ultimately, when you look at this Celtics offense, I think so much of it comes down to 3-point shooting and extending possessions this season. The free throws, that was interesting. And I'm curious to see, do the Cavaliers send a bunch of clips to the league and the Celtics get a less friendly whistle, even though it's on their home parquet? And then defensively, that's really, again, where this is going to boil down to, okay, they showed us they're willing to spin the dial. They'll play Kristaps Porzingis up, and they seem comfortable in that. How do we attack that? And so I wouldn't be surprised if you see not just more drive and kick, but then that extra pass, and where they're trying to work it to the second side and then continue to move it and keep the Celtics in scramble mode. So I think that's what the Cavaliers are going to look to do, especially if Kristaps Porzingis is playing up on the screen.
I'm all in on the playoff feel of this, where, I mean, Jack and I have talked about it. Feels like the Celtics could see the Cavs in the playoffs. They can certainly see Orlando in the playoffs. This is a great preview / test to see what it's going to be like when they open up a series at home with 2 games. They played okay in game 1. They were good in the second half. They were good enough to win, but they started very slow. Something you could see in a playoff game. They come out cold. They're tight. They're excited, so they press a little bit too much, whatever. Now you've got a Cavs team who's looking for some payback, might get Mobley back in the lineup after he wasn't playing yesterday. You're going to have a whole new challenge if he's a part of the game. Cleveland's spacing will change a little bit if that's the case. I think it might become a little bit harder on Porzingis because he's going to have 2 bodies down low instead of just one. And you could see the rebounding take a turn for the worse, which will be very, very displeasing for me to watch as I sit there in the 9th floor resisting the urge
That's
to
right.
slam the desk.
We welcome Sam LaFrance to the press box for the first time.
I went one time when I was at the news station, and I clapped when they won the tip, and I was told not to do that. I was told not to do that.
That's awesome. No, I mean, as far as the second game, I think what Bobby said and what you said, Sam, rings true. Just stick to what works, but be ready to make adjustments. And I think that's kind of what they did in the first game. So you just have to be ready to do it again in the second game. I'm also enjoying the playoff-like atmosphere of these games. Feels like both teams were trying real hard. Feels like there was a lot of tough shot making, which is reminiscent of a playoff series as well. So I think this will be another good test for the Celtics to see how resilient they can be and how consistent they can be heading in to the Thursday night rematch against the Cavs. Last thing I believe we have on the agenda today is Celtics now have an open two-way spot. So the Celtics waived Nathan Knight yesterday, right before the Cavs game. I was sitting courtside with Cam before the game, and we looked at our phones. We're like, "Oh, Celtics waived Nathan Knight. He's gone." And now they have an open two-way spot. I wrote about some options for Celtics Park briefly. We're going to discuss that on the full-length pod as well. I can go over some of the cliff notes too. But Bobby, curious to know your thoughts on this open two-way spot. Why do you think they waived Nathan Knight now? Are they planning for something? Is it just for flexibility? Any names pop in your head? Just overall thoughts on this new, I guess, thing that there is to talk about.
So my sense is the driving force is that we have the Winter Showcase in Orlando coming up. And I'm sure there are names in mind, but more than anything, it's going into that with the ability to sign whoever stands out and impresses them the most. That's also willing to come to Boston. And if that player is not already on a two-way contract, they're probably amenable to it. And then it becomes, what are they looking for? Are they even prioritizing, okay, we want someone who can play the 4 and the 5, or we need someone who can shoot the ball. We don't want to challenge JD Davison with another point guard. It's going to be really interesting to see what they prioritize. As far as names, Jack, you have about 20 of them. I'm sure we wrote about much of the same, but I'll let you hit on those when this gets batted back around to you.
Yeah, it's going to be a quick touch pass back to Jack because I got nothing for you. I was very disappointed to realize that Kenneth Free is not two-way eligible, so I no longer care about this spot. David Duke Jr. PC product. That's all I got for you. And also,
Yeah, he's
the less JD Davison, the better.
We're not huge JD Davison's guys on this pod, so I think some healthy guard competition can help. Like I said, we'll be going over the full list, I believe, on the How About Them Celtics full length pod, which drops tomorrow as you guys are listening to this. But some quick cliff note guys, just some guys that stand out to me the most. I do like David Duke Jr. He's playing for the Delaware Bluecoats right now. All the guys I mentioned are playing in the G League. I sort of focused on guys who are putting up good stats in the G League and are two-way eligible. David Duke Jr. and Scottie Pippen Jr. I think are two solid options if you want to give JD Davison some competition there. Scottie Pippen Jr. is only 6'1", but he's a very good defensive guard. He's averaging around 2 steals and a block a game in the G League right now, which is crazy for a guy who's 6'1". And his 3-point percentage is up from last year, so it's a good sign that he's making progress in that area. Same thing can be said for Jamius Ramsey. He's 22 years old, playing for the OKC Blue. He spent some time with the Kings. He's 6'3", but again, 3-point percentage is up. He's a good rebounder for his height because he's a very athletic guard. And then the last guy I'll mention is going to be Jordan Shaquille, who's on the main Celtics right now. So if the Celtics did want to just keep it in-house, I think he might be the best option. DJ Stewart's up there too, but he had a chance to win the two-way spot before Nathan Knight got it. So don't know if he'll have that chance. But Jordan Shaquille, 6'6", 25, shooting 42.9% in the G League while also picking up 5 rebounds a night. If they were looking to find another Sam Hauser, another shooter, because we know those are always valuable, and not going to try to predict the future here, but Sam Hauser's going to want a big payday. I'm not saying they have to replace him, but if you want to have some more guys that can shoot on the roster, Jordan Shaquille is one of the best shooters in the G League and has been for the past few seasons. Got to work with him a little bit on the defensive end, but you could have said that about Sam Hauser a couple years ago too, and look where he is now. So those are some cliff notes, guys, there.
What if they go sign Oleg?
Oh,
so we can do another Oleg video. And
that's your guy, Sam?
Well, it's the internet's guy. We did an Oleg video and everybody watched.
This is true.
They came out in droves to watch us talk about Oleg, who you can't slide a piece of paper under him when he jumps.
That's true as well. I saw him up close at the Celtics practice before they left for Summer League in Las Vegas, and I can confirm that assessment. And Jack, I'd say another name to keep an eye on is the guy I brought up to you yesterday, former Kentucky Wildcat Ashton Hagans, 6'3" guard, wiry, quick, sees the floor well, generating over 5 assists per game in the G League. So he's a player who, again, if they want a backcourt addition with size, he fits the bill. And, you know, I think JD Davison does a really good job of using his explosivity to get into the paint. Ashton Hagans uses his long strides and his quickness to do so. And I think he sees the floor a little bit better than Davison.
Yeah. I can get on board with that too. Like I said, if you'd like to see the full list, I'm sure Bobby's going to be pumping out articles about it. We're going to talk about the article I wrote for Celtics blog on the pod, and you can also go read it. It's just called 12 potential two-way contracts for the Celtics. But yeah, I think we hit all the points. Anything else that I missed, Bobby?
I think we covered it all.
Awesome. Well, thank y'all for tuning in to Talking C's. Make sure to subscribe to How About Them Celtics and check out all of Bobby's work at Inside the Celtics. And I'll let Sam wrap it up.
Hey, thank you very much for listening or watching. Make sure you check out Inside the Celtics, part of SI Media, right? Check out all of Bobby's work. You can get Bobby on Twitter at Bobby Kravitsky. If you like the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notification button. We're doing these. We're doing full-length pods. We're doing game recaps. We're doing rumor breakdowns, film breakdowns, and, of course, live a half hour before every Celtics game here and on Facebook, which is just the name of the pod. You can find us on Apple and Spotify as well. Follow us. Leave a 5-star review for the audio versions of the full-length pods and the game recaps. You can find us, if you want to reach out, hbtcpod@gmail.com. You can find us on socials at How About Them C's, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can follow Jack on Twitter at JacksWinnaby. You can follow me at Samuel France NBA. That's it for us. Bye.